Good morning and welcome everyone to our very first Cortex webinar. My name's Dan Hawes. I'm one of the co-founders of Cortex Recruitment, which was set up in 2011 to match technical candidates with up to 5 years professional experience with a range of employers predominantly based in London, ranging from fintech firms, consultancies, and a few other sectors predominantly in London. So today we're going to talk to 4 candidates who we're going to find out a little bit more about where they are right now in the jobs market in the middle of everything that's going on. So we're going to hear from 4 of our candidates, as well as Chris Rogers, who's the director at Cortex Recruitment in London. So perhaps we'll start with an introduction by Chris, and then we'll move in turn to each presenter. Chris.
Hi everyone. Yes, my name's Chris. I head up Cortex, so based normally in London. Very keen today just to hear, obviously, your situations and how you're finding the job market today, and really maybe what you want to see moving forwards too.
Great. Derek.
Oh, hi there. My name's Derek. So starting from ancient history, I started my life, working life in a user support kind of role, and then moved into more server administration, deploying and maintaining servers across sub-Saharan Africa. From there, I went on to software development, project management, and business analysis, and that's kind of where I've been at the last several years in a business analysis consulting kind of role. I was made redundant in December, and I've been on the job market since November, looking around. Just some observations about that. I don't know if it's too early to pitch this. Sorry if I'm jumping the gun, Dan.
Yes.
But certainly the market peaked in late January, early February, and then with everything going on, COVID and Brexit, it all just has fallen apart. So I'm still looking, and well, I'm optimistic because it seems to be coming out the other side now.
Good. Well, we'll touch on that in a minute. That's very interesting to hear how your experience has been over those last 4 or 5 months. David, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I also happen to come from a support background initially. After a period in tech support, moved into development during the dot-com crash, then sort of ended up back in support for a while, then back into development. And since then, I've spent the last 8 years as a contractor, working in a sort of range of sectors, fintech, transport. And I had a nice 5-year long contract that came to an end as the company needed to make some cuts. And so having stayed with one place for that long, then I decided that actually my sort of preferences, loyalty and so on was better suited to a permanent role. And so decided to switch to looking at sort of lead developer roles in the permanent side instead. That was while a lot of people were being laid off because of IR35, so immediately finding there's quite a bit of competition, but there's still a lot of jobs in the market. And then coronavirus hit, and that took a lot of things off the cliff, a lot of things going on hold. So then obviously processes take a lot longer, and so I'm now at a position of I'm going through reference checking to hopefully press ahead with a role, but yeah, so it's taken a good couple of months to sort of work through processes. There's so many got put on hold, even at the final stage interviews. So it's been an interesting time.
Yeah, and that's particularly interesting, your switch from contract to permanent. So perhaps we can discuss that as a topic as well, and why you chose to do that.
Sure.
Deepak, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, my name is Deepak, and I'm originally from India, but I've been in the UK since almost 10.5 years now. And my career path, I started off more into a back office, which is like 14 years back, but then slowly moved into more of middle office and trade operations and improvising the process and things like that. But my last 6 years have been purely into business analysis and project management. So I've been learning quite a lot, and I've been doing my Prince 2 for project management. And I work in a lot of like financial institutions. Mostly it's banks that I've been working with, and also as a consultant as well for a short time. And I did my last role actually almost a year back, and that was due to personal reasons. I had to go back home, like my dad was not well, so I was there for about 4 months. And then again, when I was back, it was again Christmas time, and then things were like picking up, just like how director, like it was really good. I was almost through in some of the rounds, but then because of the COVID, everything just stopped. And so yeah, I'm just actively looking out for roles, but yeah, it is picking up, because do get some calls and things like that. But just like David said as well, till you are not in the job, you never know, isn't it? Even like you clear the interviews and then you get the offer letter, but then they say like it's just gone on hold for some months or something like that. So yeah, I think that's the difficult part at the moment, because you're still not sure till you're not into the job.
Yeah, that's interesting. And a lot of experience there. And you know, you were at Christmas time hopeful, and then
Yeah,
like a lot of people, things are put on hold. So we can talk about that and how that's starting to change for you, and which sectors you feel that may have picked up from your experience. Thank you. Matteo, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, so I'm basically still a student, so I don't have a big background of experience, but I do have some. I worked for 2 years into various companies as a web developer, and currently, you know, I hope to finish my studies in September, and I'm trying to basically explore the whole market, job market, as I don't have as much experience, and find a job, full-time job, that I could start working possibly as soon as possible. But because the whole COVID situation, it's a bit harder to do so. But I hope things will turn out to be actually good in the end, and it will not be that hard to find something.
So that's interesting. You're at the very start in some ways, despite having 2 years experience. You're going to come to the end of a master's, presumably?
Yes.
Yeah. And it'd be interesting to hear your viewpoint on when you decide is a good time to join the jobs market, and the skills that you're going to need to enter the jobs market in a strong position. Okay, thank you very much for introducing yourselves. Some interesting backgrounds from all of you. You're all in different situations, and that's precisely why we want to speak to you today, to find out about what your plans, as best as possible, can be over the next few months. Now, perhaps we'd start with David, because I believe you have actually found work, which is fantastic news, and that would be great to share. Can you tell us a little bit about the process? You don't have to mention the employer, but the background of the company, the role, and any other jobs that you went for, please.
Yeah, I think one of the things I can say is that the finance sector has seemed to remain more active, better than a lot of sectors. So some of the banking roles stayed going. This one's at a hedge fund, and the ones that were put on hold included sort of technology sector, logistics, and yeah, so the banking ones, they didn't go on hold in quite the same way. I did hear about some that they support plans, but you also saw ones like HSBC decide that they were going to shelve some redundancies. So the sort of competition for roles in the sector, I think, didn't spike in quite the same way. So things kept moving forwards a bit better. It was still a process that took quite a while. I think they wanted to go through more interviewing than they might have done otherwise. I don't I mean, previously I've tended to get into roles after sort of 1 or 2 stages of interviews and maybe a technical test, and not this sort of 3 or 4 interviews and maybe 2 tech tests and so on. This has been a more extensive process that I've seen for companies wanting to adopt. That's obviously takes that much longer. And obviously when you want to start something as soon as possible, it's you go, so just make a decision, please. And so yeah, this process, it's probably took about a month to work its way through, and they're still wanting to do that sort of external reference checking. That'll take another week or two. So things are a bit longer, but they're looking at onboarding with either getting me some access details so I can connect from on a bring your own device setup, or sending out a laptop, one or the other. They haven't decided yet. And so yeah, there's those plans to bring me on board, and to have some initial calls with their sort of external partners and with themselves to sort of get familiar with everyone and the processes. But then they're definitely champing at the bits to have that sort of face-to-face meeting with everyone in the same room as soon as they can, because I think everyone wants it, because of that. How well do you feel you really know people when you've only seen them on a webcam? You can work together for a long time, but most of us aren't really familiar with not actually sort of knowing their colleagues from face-to-face meetings. So it's going to be interesting.
Okay. And did you go for any other jobs as well?
Yeah, I made a lot of applications for roles. I was final stage in at least 3 that were put on hold. So I had a month's warning that my contract was coming to an end. I had some things set up there. A week before the end of the contract, then the company went into lockdown. That was a week before the full official lockdown. So I had virtual leaving drinks, which were every bit as disappointing as you might expect. And the processes that I'd been interviewing for suddenly went from sort of face-to-face. I'd had one face-to-face interview just before things started being locked down. That was actually with SOPA. And then some others, they went to video interviews, and so it suddenly stopped being face-to-face at all. And then all the rest of it since then has been sort of telephone chat, video interview, sort of technical tests. And yeah, I've done probably about 8 technical tests over this process. I've had probably about 15 video interviews with different people in total, at least. So it's definitely been a process. And I think at the moment you have to sort of say, well, as much as there were particular companies that I applied for to say I particularly would have a particular reason to work with you, and for me a hedge fund was one of those areas that would particularly appeal, but also looking at ones like Facebook as ones that are known to be supportive of their sort of technical team. It is also one of saying, well, when you have a competitive job markets, then the only thing you can sensibly do is say, right, I'm going to reach out to everyone on LinkedIn. I'm going to ask everyone if you can do an internal referral, if there's any roles with former colleagues, speak to hundreds of recruiters, and then just see what opportunities arise. I happened to get 2 offers in the same day, and the second one, they came to sort of are you still available? And it was no. So I don't know whether their offer would have been better or worse. Once I made a decision, I've made a decision. But I'm now going to be helping them with some sort of technical interviewing, because they decided I was the right person for the job, and they want now my input on picking the next best person. So it's kind of some interesting freelance bits as well.
Sounds like you've had a lot of experience with video interviews at this moment. 15, you say?
Something like that, yeah. And most of them have gone fairly smoothly. The occasional ones are broken up completely.
Yeah, see, that's interesting and something new for a lot of candidates that they have to get their head around and be comfortable with.
Yep.
And it can take a while to relax into it, because most people are nervous anyway at the best of times with an interview, let alone a video interview. So I think a lot of candidates right now would like some sort of practice and advice on that. So them getting you involved is probably a good thing for all concerned.
Yeah, I don't think the main thing is that you just treat it as a conversation. I've been a contractor for long enough to know that if you get too nervous, then you tend to mess up. So one of the key things I found is to relax and you go, people want to work with people they can see themselves being friends with. So, don't worry about being too formal and deferential and so on. So just treat it as a chat.
Yeah, as long as the audio is good, the video and the lighting and your positioning and all the rest of it gives the right first impression. There's no reason why it shouldn't and is working for many people right now. And that now has been included with onboarding, inductions, and in your situation, will you actually be working remotely full time now?
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, I'm looking at it going, well, I've got that much more time because I won't be commuting initially. Yes. What can I do with that? But yeah, it's going to be that sort of laptop shipped out and just working fully remotely. I kind of feel like they should sort of send everyone there's a Facebook portal device you sit by the laptop, and so if you want to have that chat with your colleague, you just spin that up and keep your machine free. There's probably a few things like that companies might do well to consider, but yeah, I don't know how it's going to go yet. It'll be interesting, but I think a lot of programmers are geared up to work remotely a bit better than perhaps some other areas of work anyway. A bit more used to sort of going off and sort of beavering away at things and not expecting to spend so much of the day in meetings and so on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of advantages, and if you are motivated, disciplined, and ultimately more productive working from home, then the company will be happy. They're saving on office space, and for many companies, they are now really thinking whether they're going to continue after the lockdown with certain members of staff staying at home working remotely. Before we move on, I'm very interested to know that kind of the three criteria for taking this new job. I mean, one of the big decisions for you was going from contract to permanent.
Yeah.
Now, was that a result of what's happening now? Did you want more job security, or what were the main reasons you took this job?
Well, I think with the permanent versus contract side, there's often a lot of attention about, oh, why are you looking at permanent now? Why are you looking at contract now? With switching to contract, it's generally fairly easy. There's you're looking, someone's offering 50% more money or something like that. Or you're getting an opportunity to work in a new sector. In my case, the switch to contract was both. For switching back, it was about saying I'd been in a contract for 5 years. As a contractor, I didn't have live access. I didn't have that discussion about career prospects and so on. And if you're there for that long, unless you're at the level that you want to stay and you don't want any more input. So if you want to just sit in a corner and beaver away at your tasks and they're going to stay the same for years, then contractor is fine. And it's absolutely worked for a lot of people, contractors I know, because they don't want to go into management. They want to sell their expertise for a higher rate. For me, I kind of got invested in the product. I was pushing for how to take things forwards. And as a contractor, I was held at arm's length a little bit in terms of having that input. So I made the decision that while it would be a step down in salary, I wanted to be involved in that process more, and so I really had to look at permanent roles to get that.
Good, that's interesting. So you wanted to move into a new area. You are more career-minded now, and you like the fact that you could work remotely, and presumably the salary ticked the box. So.
Working remotely is kind of something that's going to happen for everyone at the moment. For taking this particular role, I'd made a decision that, having worked at Barclays and Reuters in the finance sector before, I quite wanted to move back into the finance sector. So the sector worked for me. The selling points of the company were not just that, but it was also the level of involvement. As a smaller team, the role is then one that has additional input, and perhaps the salary isn't as good as the ones I've been looking at elsewhere. I've actually looked at sort of 15,000 a year less than I was looking at elsewhere, and it's very much about saying, but I want that input. I want to feel that the people I'm working with are nice guys, and they're going to be people I'm going to keep wanting to work with, and willing to take that kind of hit on the sort of salary just to have the environment that gives me the input, gives me the exposure to technologies, and gives me the kind of social structure that that's going to work for me.
Yeah, that's a very well thought out decision. And when do you start?
Hopefully not the coming week, but the one after.
Right, once the reference checks have gone through.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, David. That's very interesting. And perhaps Derek, you can give us your opinion on where you're at and what you're looking for right now.
Sure. So the last time I was in the job market was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and some of the differences I've noticed then compared to now is that there seem to be far more actual companies advertising positions now as opposed to recruitment agents. I don't know why that is, but it just seems that I'm applying or have been applying to more companies directly.
Right.
On the job boards, the Glassdoors and the LinkedIns and etc. The other thing that I've noticed is that there do seem to be more structured testing being done. I mean, there always have been technical tests in the past, but the tests that I've been doing these last few interviews certainly have been far more structured online tests. So I think that technology has evolved in the last 5 years as well. Certainly where I am at the moment, I'm going onto the job boards every day looking for jobs. As I was saying earlier, the jobs do seem to be picking up a bit, certainly in the financial sector. That has been relatively consistent, but picking up again now in the last week or so. There has been quite a few emails coming back to me to say these jobs are on hold.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to getting back to those people in the next couple of weeks to say, well, okay, now that we're starting to come out of lockdown, hopefully, fingers crossed, eventually, we'll certainly start to get them back online again. Some of those jobs really did look really promising.
Yeah, in our experience, we're dealing with companies that are putting things on hold for obvious reasons. But there are certain areas where they need people right now. So you're doing all the right things, using agencies and applying directly. But it's also interesting you say how from 4 or 5 years ago there's far more structured testing now, which is what David has just gone through by the sounds of it, several more stages than he would have normally have expected. I guess various platforms are easier to access now or set up or cheaper to use, and there's obviously time savings to be had as well. So you're looking for contract or permanent work?
Permanent would be my first choice, but I am considering contract too.
Okay, so what are you looking for from an employer?
Certainly the stability, although in this day and age, there's no such thing as stability really anymore. I mean, even the largest companies, whereas 30 years ago, you might have been expected and could have expected the company to keep you employed for 30 years. Yeah. That's just not a thing anymore anyway. I remember, sorry, little anecdotes, at school, we were taught to try have a 5-year plan and a goal for 5 years. And I don't see how that's even possible anymore because technology is moving on, the world is moving on so quickly. We just have to be far more adaptive to the environment around us. So, really what am I looking for in a company going forward? I would like the stability. Yeah. I would like to try and maintain the same level of lifestyle that I've had. That obviously means the type of money that I'll get coming in. I'm also, as you can tell by the grey, getting on in years. So I am looking forward to retirement in 15 or 20 years' time. and I really got to start thinking about my pension, because I don't have a huge capital that's going to take me through my retirement. So, you know, looking for a company that's going to give a good pension package as well, or at least allow me to give me a good enough salary to be able to manage that myself. So, you know, which is one of the reasons why I am targeting London, where I've always worked, rather than around where I live. I live in Hertfordshire. So, you know, even out here, which isn't that far out of London, the salaries are so much lower, you know, 15, 20 or more % lower.
Wow.
So it's quite a challenge to see such a lovely job just up the road, and yet I just can't take it. Yeah.
No.
Sure.
Would you be happy working remotely full time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure. You know, so certainly in my last position, and to a degree the role before that, I was working at home 2 or 3 days a week anyway. So, you know, this whole change now, as a lot of people have been asking me how am I adapting to the lockdown. Well, nothing's changed for me really, because I'm quite used to working from home. I have a reasonable setup here. So going forward, I'd love to work from home more often. And at the same time, and I know this affects a lot of other people, particularly those that are more on the extrovert end of the scale. Those type of people really do need more interaction, social interaction. So I think it's going to be a challenge for some people. And I know certainly some of my wife's colleagues and friends who have been forced into this lockdown environment. They're really struggling with the lack of social interaction. So, yeah, I think having that balance is what we need to achieve going forward. And I mean, like any other chap out here or person out here, I do quite like the social aspect of going into the office, meeting people, establishing relationships, not only in the office but in some of the social events afterwards too.
Yeah, I mean, this period is making a lot of people reflect on what kind of working environments they do prefer. So, you know, it doesn't suit everyone. People may prefer having an atmosphere in an office, and it kind of pulls them along, and they like the social aspects of it, whereas others find that just not something they would like. They'd like to just put their headphones on and head down and get on with their job. Thank you very much, and not have to deal with that. So
yeah, you know, maybe it's an opportunity for companies to restructure their offices into a different style as well. I mean, at the moment, as far as I know, just about every UK company is very much open plan. Across the whole floor is just rows and rows of desks, as opposed to the American style of little cubicles. Now, I don't think that I'd like working in a cubicle. That just does sound a bit soul destroying. And I see Deepak's nodding his head. I suspect he's had that experience. But maybe somewhere in between, where there's smaller teams of maybe 6 to 10 people in a smaller walled off area, just to keep that social distancing in the office. Don't know, maybe it is something that companies are starting to consider. And
yeah, they are. They're going to have to adapt their workplaces and have you know, ways people can keep 2 meters apart. I mean, I don't know how it's going to happen on a corridor or
yeah, sure.
And so, you know, yeah, the whole working environment within offices is going to have to potentially be redrawn, where, you know, a call center or something like that has to think about how they're going to use the space and whether that's attractive to people who they're looking to recruit as well. So yes, interesting that as individuals we're reflecting on what we want from our jobs and our employers, but also for business owners, how they create an environment that's going to be attractive, not just within an office, but the flexibility to work from home more maybe up for debate. Thank you, Derek. That's been useful hearing your take on things. Thank you. Deepak, perhaps we could hear about your experience over the last few months.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like I told you, it was picking up, and I think at the moment it is like from the last couple of weeks, it is getting a bit better. I am getting calls, and the way that I approach is, of course, on LinkedIn. I try as much as possible to have connections, to speak to them if they can refer me, and there are most of the jobs directly from the company, and which is good in one way, because you have the HR directly telling you like how the interview process is, and they have a feedback for you. And also what I do personally is, before I apply for a job, I try to tailor my CV, because I can't put exactly what they are requiring, or maybe there are some things which I might have done in my previous experiences but not mentioned on my CV. So I usually try to work on my CV for most of the roles that I apply for. So I have a dozen of CVs which are relevant to that particular role, because if the role is for project management, they're not much interested in what I did in operations. So simple as that. So I try to reduce the operational bit in my CV and put more of the project management which is relevant to that role. So I try to do that approach. And other than that, I think because of this lockdown, I think it is a bit of expansion of your horizon, because now if like I stay in London, so even if there is a job say in Scotland or maybe a bit north, and if there is a remote working and maybe you just need to go maybe once in 2 weeks or once in 1 month, it gives you more opportunities. So that's the reason like you can apply for jobs not only within the radius that you are in, maybe it increases the radius that you can work for at the moment, and maybe it's just going to continue like that looking at the present situation. And it also gives you a bit of more time, because you don't have to commute, because I know people commute for maybe an hour and a half. So you save those 2-3 hours, which you can be more productive at home working from home, because I've been working from home as well in my previous roles because of the constraint of the office space. So I had to work like 3 days in a week at home. So it is quite initially it's a bit of a trouble, because till you get used to it, and till you don't see a person face to face, that confident and things like that. But then slowly but surely, I think it's going to become the norm of the day going forward. And what I expect from a company is more of growth. And because I come from the financial sector, and financial sector is not as low as others, so it is picking up. And because of the new fintechs, because even now the roles that I apply for, or if I'm getting an interview call, it's more of a startup type of companies, which have only been there for maybe 4 years, 5 years, or even 2 years. So I see an opportunity there, because you always grow with the company, because if the company is growing from a 50-member team to a 200-member team, and if you have started off as a pilot, or you have started off initially, you have chances of growing horizontally as well, like in your career as well. And you get to learn new things, because they try to expand the horizon into different zones. They have different products that they get into. So I think it's a good situation at the moment, though of course COVID is not good. But yeah, for the job market side of it, we can see the positive of it and try to work on it. And other than that, what I've been doing is trying to work on LinkedIn learnings and other learnings that I can do online, like SQL. I try to like enhance my knowledge, because I don't think we are going to get this particular time again, wherein you are just blocked for holding the job. And about half a day just applying for jobs, the half day in the morning, and then post that just try to chase them or do something like that. But then also I try to put my time on learning, because at the moment it's the best time to do it.
Yes, very good advice. I mean, one of the first questions at interview might well be, what did you do during the lockdown?
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, so you're using online courses to reskill or keep up to date. What exactly are you doing?
So yeah, so basically like you got these LinkedIn learnings, which are really good, I see. And because I've got some connections on LinkedIn as well, who are basically like mentors who try to help you with your either your CV, or I try to tell you what are the tips that you can do. So I think connections are very important. And of course, now you can't meet a person face to face, but you can surely meet them like socially on webcam, and you can speak to them. So that's what I've been doing. And I've been doing my prints too as well, like project management. So like a professional training as well, and an advanced SQL training. So whatever is relevant to my role or what is my interest, so I try to do that. so that that can help me future in enhancing my skills when I go for work ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, building a network is one of the best ways of finding your next career opportunity.
Yes.
And you can't just build a network overnight and then use it. It takes time. You have to nurture those relationships, and when you need their help, you've got a support network there. So time invested in that up to this point will really bear dividends for those individuals, and learning new skills, which is really important, because you know, we can't if companies are putting things on hold, we can't put ourselves on hold. We need to be putting ourselves in the strongest position, so when we come out of this, you know, we're a nose ahead of all the other candidates who are going to be entering the job market. Yeah.
And also, like, I do get roles which are not relevant to me, but I do have connections who have the relevant experience. Like, I'm not a purely IT person, but when I apply for jobs or I get it from other agencies, so what I try to do is provide or forward that to the connections that I have, because like how you expect them to forward it to you, it's the best thing that you can help them if possible at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it. You're helping each other out by sharing job information. That's great. Thank you for that, Deepak. That's interesting to hear your experience in the job market. Perhaps we can turn to Matteo now and hear from you.
Sure. So basically, I started looking for jobs sometime mid-February, I would say, and this was probably the first time that I was properly started looking for a job. So I would say I don't have so much experience how to compare the state that was before COVID and the state that's now, because I actually started looking for jobs when this all started. So it's not such a big of a difference from February to now. And basically, I'm still trying to figure out what to look for, because I do have some experience and I got a little bit cozy there, and I would like to maybe find something in that area, which is web development. But again, as I'm finishing my studies just now, IT sector is quite broad, and I would like to explore maybe a bigger part if I can, or at least something, because if you don't try something else, you can't really know what do you actually want. So I'm struggling a bit there to kind of balance the area I have experience in, or to pursue something new. And I would need to find a job that has good salary, because I'm trying to work abroad, so not from my home country. That's why I need enough salary to live through the month to another. And basically I'm trying to figure out what's happening, because I don't have enough experience, I would say.
Yeah, imagine that's very hard right now, trying to figure out which career path to go down, because until we emerge from this, it'll be hard to tell which sectors will have the most jobs. Maybe there's a lot of pent-up demand in certain areas, and we'll bounce back in some sectors, and others it'll take longer. So I guess the only thing you can do in the meantime is concentrate on your studies, and you'll be entering the job market in September, presumably.
I mean, I started, actually got an offer to start working at September in the Netherlands, but yeah, it's hard to start working somewhere, because they require you to, at least initially, to actually get to the job and work in a company until they build up confidence in you that you can work from home. So even if I would get a job now, I probably wouldn't be able to start, because everything is closed. So it is kind of a weird situation. It is a bit harder than it's supposed to be, but I still think it's working all right. The ball is rolling. It's not that everything stopped all the way. it's just a little bit slower than it usually is.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about this job and the employer then in the Netherlands.
So the job is in finance basically, and I applied for a role of backup data specialist. So it's all the way different thing that I was working until now, and I would say this wasn't so hard to pursue because the company is, as I heard, is quite big. So
Right.
they are not that concerned about the whole situation, and especially because it's finance, you always have the flow of money and everything. So I would say they still work all right. And the bigger impact of this whole situation, I would say, is more on smaller companies or startup companies, because they don't have solid work that they're working for, and if everything did stop as it did, it's hard to kind of keep going. It's harder. So that's how I see it, I would say.
Yeah, it is hard, and particularly there you've touched on how working for smaller firms or bigger firms and how they're handling this situation and recruiting people and trying to onboard them remotely, which, as David suggested, is what a lot of companies are now moving into. But it might be easier for a bigger firm to do that than a smaller firm, maybe, if they are unsure, having never met someone in face to face, getting over that.
Yeah, I mean,
might be challenging.
basically, I got the feeling that everybody says you are a programmer, you are IT specialist person. It's easy for you to find a job in the branch. You always have a job, but that's not quite true. I mean, you can find it maybe more easily if you have some experience, like 5-10 years. But if you're just starting, it's not that easy as it might seem. And especially now, because smaller companies usually, they need you. They need you to know things, so when you join them, you can start working right away and contribute to the whole company and project. And bigger companies, as they all have bigger regulations and they have a lot of staff, so you as a new person, they know that they will have to teach you the first maybe month or two or even a year until you're actually really contributing to the whole system and project. And because they know that and they're looking to find someone who they will teach, it's a bit easier to actually enroll that company and start working there.
Yeah, the bigger firms will have a graduate scheme and the resources to train recruits up for a year or two, and then they're ready to hit the ground. A smaller firm who maybe recruits 1 to 2 graduates throughout the year maybe have fewer resources, and they'll need someone to bring experience that helps them up that learning curve quicker. So
Exactly.
it's interesting what is it just actual work experience some of these firms are looking for? Is it in a particular programming skill or software?
Well, I was basically looking for jobs on LinkedIn, and you have a description there on what they're looking for. And I would say there is a small percentage of time when you actually, can tick all of the check boxes there that you are familiar with, if you don't have as much experience. And then, you try to apply, because basically now I applied for everything. I just needed a job. And there's always someone who is a little bit better at those things. And if you're looking to work in maybe a city on a bigger side, there are a lot of appliances there, and it's hard to get something, because why would they hire you if there is someone else who is maybe 2% better than you at the job? And maybe there is a factor that I introduce myself not so good, so I might be better at something than someone else, but as they introduce them better, they actually got a job and not me. So it's a bit hard to balance everything. It's not that easy as it seems. Like, you apply, you either get or do not get a job. It's tricky. You need to work your way into that.
It is when you're starting out, when you're getting that kind of feedback that you haven't got the experience, it can be very demoralizing. But I mean, our panelists have been through that. And David, you have some advice for Matteo?
Yeah. I think one of the key things is always about finding your sort of unique selling point, why you are a good person for the role, because you can look at anything with 20 years experience. I'll be there going, I've spent the last 5 years, I've done some things in great depth, but there are other things that I haven't really touched. So I'll go into a role knowing full well that there are some things that they'd like to have that I won't have much experience of, or certainly not recently. So it's about saying, what are you good at? What do you bring to the table? And also bear in mind that some of those that are a lot more experienced are also quite a bit more expensive. So there's a balance there. And it's not to, don't worry about whether you're the most experienced person in this or that. It's the one going, what do you bring, whether it's enthusiasm, willingness to learn, a particular project that you worked on that you can be proud of. Have your story to tell and don't worry about anyone else's.
Excellent.
But I mean, thank you for the advice. I would say, fine, if I was looking for a job in the same branch that I was working in already, I could present myself a little bit better because I have more confidence in what I already did. But if I'm trying to, as I said, find something new, because I am now at the whole beginning of everything of work period of my life, it's hard to actually transit to something new because you're basically coming there. You don't know anything, and how to present yourself in that way so they pick you. And you say you basically don't know anything they're looking for.
Well, I think for me, some of it's about finding your voice, what your views are, because I went for going to lead development this time around. And so I went into the interview at Zopa and they started asking questions about your management approach, dealing with people underneath you, if there's a sort of disciplinary issue and whatever, things that I've never had to deal with before. And actually for that first interview, I was kind of a bit unprepared. And so I came away from that interview and had to think about what couldn't I answer as well, what didn't I have a good answer for, and had time thinking about what did I need to learn, but also just what was my opinion on things, so that the next interview, when those kind of questions came up, then I had answers, I had a better framework for how I want to approach things. I am moving into something new in terms of having more oversight and more planning, as opposed to being more focused on hands-on development. So it is something new. The interviewing has focused on that. And sometimes you have a couple of bad interviews where it tells you what you need to work out for yourself. And then you go into the next one better prepared.
Yeah, it's a learning experience, isn't it? And you get feedback and knockbacks, and you're not going to get every job you apply for, but by going through the process, it helps shape your ideas about where your strengths are, and like you say, your USP. So it's tough at the start, but over time, you'll learn from that experience, and you'll be in a better position to find a job that is right for you, rather than an employer taking you on and it not working out for you. So it's actually a worthwhile process.
It is. I mean, I'm actually basically glad that I started working while still in my studies, because it is a bit easier to find maybe a part-time job as a student, and gain that, you know, working experience. So there is at least something you can put into your resume that is not just, you know, schools or universities you attended. So it is a bit, it is a good, but it's still quite struggling.
Yeah, and you have a job offer, so that's great. When they take you on, that's just the question mark right now, isn't it?
Sorry?
You have a job offer, but it's just when they and how they can take you on board.
Yeah, basically, I need to get through screening right now, and that will take some time. And basically, onboarding will happen, you know, at minimum when this Corona situation finishes. Before that, I'm actually not even able to travel, I think. And for onboarding, I need to be there in person. And even if I was there, the company is not open, so I need to wait.
Sure. And in the meantime, you're still going to apply for other jobs.
I'm looking for things. Yeah, I'm trying to explore the market. So if I stumble across something that seems interesting to me, yeah, I will not hesitate to apply. And if I get something, that would be great.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Matteo. That's interesting, your viewpoint as well, just starting out at this particular time. Perhaps we can turn to Chris, who's been dealing with lots of other candidates apart from yourselves, to see what he's been hearing.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you everyone as well for hearing all your kind of stories. It's echoed 800-fold from everyone that I'm speaking to too. I mean, firstly, it's been a very, very tough time. We've had Brexit looming, then a general election, then Brexit. If you throw in IR35 and now COVID-19 as well, it's been pretty tough. But like you say, hopefully things are starting to kind of move now. I think the market's moving quite quickly, and not in terms of maybe live jobs, but maybe like you've all mentioned about the sort of processes now. There is rigorous testing, there is video interviews as well. So we're thinking the interview process now is looking a bit smoother. And obviously, as you're all based from home, hopefully when you get something, it should be easier to attend these. I mean, often people are taking time off work for multiple interviews, where now as everything's done remotely, it can be a little bit kind of smoother. I think you all picked up on it though. I think that the big point that we're finding at the moment is the onboarding side. That proving a bit more challenging. I think when firms started processes, we thought the lockdown wouldn't be going on for as long as it's kind of gone on. Now it seems to be going on for a lot longer. That's why you're probably seeing roles that you've applied for being in processes now put on hold too. I think firms will hire, but they just need to work out how they're going to do it. Matteo's a prime example too. There's a role there for him. They want him to kind of join them, but they need to work out how that's going to work on. Some of the managers that I'm speaking to as well is, I think the fact that everyone was working from home remotely, that's never been done before. I think the early enthusiasm and the energy they kind of had, the output that they kind of had, that's starting to fizzle out slightly now. Whereas you would normally manage a team, maybe do a social event to kind of get the enthusiasm back up. It's quite challenging to making 40, 50 different video calls on an individual basis. So what we're seeing as well, that's just another slight factor that firms are now saying, well, actually, maybe we don't need to add to this team now. So there are challenges there, but I think you've all mentioned you've seen a lot more progress in the last few weeks, and that's what we're seeing at Cortex as well. We're having companies now making plans, thinking about hiring. Very strange thing to say, but as it becomes a bit more normal, the sort of working from home, firms are quite happy to kind of plan for that. It's the uncertainty that they don't like. So we have seen some firms come to us recently talking about hiring now. A few weeks ago, there wasn't even on the card. So fingers crossed that there's a few more things through there too. I think just one quick thing that I think Deepak mentioned as well, and Derek mentioned as well, just on the location. Just a quick question, really, because what you tend to find is that different sectors that you can potentially work in sometimes are locked to you because of location. You might send telecoms, for example, if you want to be based in central London, they tend to be based on the kind of on the outskirts, and that can be a bit of a barrier in terms of locations to kind of go through. So I just wanted one quick question to you all, really, too. Do you think you think your career might change now if this becomes a bit more normal in working from home? Are there sort of roles out there now that are open to you that you think weren't previously?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm open to working anywhere really. As I said in my little spiel, I am concerned about the salaries, but not necessarily the location. So I mean, for me to get to Milton Keynes or Slough, it's not that much of a hassle, and about the same amount of time commute-wise.
I think for me, it's one where I actually live in Torquay with my family when I can. So I keep a place in London for work. And so there's a lot of traveling. There's over 20 hours a week traveling for that, and the expense of all of that traveling and keeping a second place. So there'd be a certain appeal to remote working. I'd need to work out where to put my stuff if I'd no longer have the place in London. But aside from that, there would clearly be some advantages. And on that extent, I did actually start to look further afield during the sort of COVID and have a look at the sites that do fully remote working, including abroad. So realizing that actually, once you start looking at remote working, it's not just going, well, I don't need to be in London. It's the one of going, I can work with a company in the US. So I'm now sort of registered with sort of TopTail on the freelance side. So if I pick up any work there, it's quite likely to be with a US company. It's going to be paid in dollars. You know, it's kind of opened up things to a global level in that.
Yeah, exactly. It's increasing your horizons, as well as for the company, they can get better talent because they don't need a person to get recruited remotely. Like even I had an interview which is in Rickmansworth, which is like 2 hours away from where I stay. But they told like you might only need to come to work once this lockdown is over, maybe only once in a week or maybe once in 2 weeks. So it was just an interview process. But so it gives me an opportunity. Else, I shouldn't have even tried for a job which is 2 hours away from where I stay. I don't mind traveling for an hour, but 2 hours one way is like almost getting and things like that. So it has increased quite a lot out of this COVID. That is something which is beneficial for both the employees and the they can get a talent from London, even if they are based anywhere in the world, just like what David told. Yeah.
Thank you, Deepak. Matteo, have you got an opinion on that?
For commuting, I didn't understand what's happening now.
Yeah, the location, is that a massive issue for you anymore? I mean, the Netherlands, isn't it? That's
yeah. I mean, you would like to be as close to the work as you can be, so you don't have to spend time for commuting. But basically, if it's in between 1 hour one way, I would say that's all right. It's maybe a bit much, but it's all right. More than that, it's you lose your whole day just to travel from work and to work, so it's not that great.
yeah. Good. We've got a few minutes left, but from what I can tell, from what everyone's said here, there's probably about 3 things that recruiters could do if they want to attract the best technical talent right now. I think the first one is use technology as much as possible to select, assess, and also onboard people. So for companies that are on the fence at the moment, they really need to get their head around how they can actually recruit and onboard people remotely. I think that will be a key thing in recruiting really good candidates, is that the system is easy to use. I think secondly, offering this increased flexibility is creeping up the list of criteria, maybe above salary, because the savings you make on commute, not having to commute with a season ticket, a train ticket or whatever, means that's not as important for your salary. So offering flexibility, working from home, either part-time or full-time, will be very attractive moving forward, as long as the person has the systems capable to do their job, and the connectivity and broadband and so forth, which isn't always possible in parts of the UK, hasten to add. And thirdly,
sorry to butt in there, but I don't think it's only the person, it's not only the candidates, but it's also the companies having the facilities. So I think there's a lot of companies that have had, certainly the larger companies even, that would have had good VPN type systems, but not geared up for 100% or even 80% of their staff to connect at the same time. So having the company getting back into their core systems, having that level of access could be a factor too. And then, of course, if you don't mind the slight digression, sorry, I'm good at these rabbit holes, is the security aspect of it as well. Is having how do we manage secure data in people's home?
Very good point.
Yeah, anyway, sorry, that was a rabbit hole. Back to what you were saying. Yeah, sorry about
that. So, yeah, having that flexibility, I think, will be very attractive to candidates and employers alike. They're going to save money on office space and things like that. But also, finally, which some of you have said in so many words, Derek, you said you're looking for stability. David, you did say you were looking for career progression, and Deepak's having a look at jobs where there are long-term prospects, and Matteo's just starting out. He definitely needs some job security. So I think career progression increasingly is becoming a higher criteria for job seekers. So if employers can understand where candidates are coming from, they're far more likely to attract and, more importantly, retain really good technical talent like you guys. We've got a couple of questions, but we've run out of time now. So what I'll do, as this session is being recorded, we can write up some of the questions and answers in a summary for people who weren't able to attend today. So I'd like to wrap up. Thank everyone for their time and for sharing their experiences with us, and also for all our attendees tuning in around the country. I hope that's been of benefit to you also. We're going to get some feedback on how this went, and we may look to do this again on a different topic. So in the meantime, we'll be posting this video to our YouTube channel so you can watch it back again. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.